different folks with different experiences that come into the industry. We all love coffee. Yeah. The history of espresso in America, a counterculture, but also we meet so many people that came at it from, the church, because the church was heavily involved in bringing cafes and putting the cafe culture. So it kind of came from both. It actually unifies some people that usually don't get along in the real world.
Yeah, like you can have a date and possibly meet the person you're going to make a life with over coffee.
Or a business meeting.
Or a business meeting. Yeah. And it all happens over this coffee. And I think the coffee, I don't know, it puts us in this place of like creativity and inspiration and of course energy.
Community.
You meet people and you start talking and you'd be like, oh, I work in coffee. And then even our culture, I grew up drinking coffee as a kid, and we drink coffee at night before we go to bed with a little pastry. And you sit around and I would talk to my mom, I would talk to my dad, or even when family members would come over, we drink instant coffee and with a lot of sugar and cream. But
and
we
pan dulce.
We had that sense of community in that table, and I think it's great. Regardless if you're in the industry or not, coffee does bring community or people together.
The first time I ever drank coffee was probably 11 or 12. I was at Boy Scout camp. I was so hungry and I hated the food they had. And I was thirsty and all they had was coffee. So I'm like snuck up to where all the adults were, poured some coffee, threw a bunch of sugar, I'd watched them, and I really liked it. But my mom would still never let me have coffee. So it was years later until I really started drinking it, but I'll never forget that. And the first time I ever had espresso was at a Last Exit on Brooklyn in the U District. That cafe had been there forever, definitely a den of artists and malcontents and an ancient lever machine. That coffee was awful, but I loved it because it was this part of this great scene. Yeah. So I was there a lot when I was a teenager. That was in the 80s, just as the coffee in Seattle was starting to blow up.
Yeah.
I didn't join the industry until years later. Second career, I kind of fell into it, and it just felt really natural.
Like coffee, and also just supporting the coffee community in any way, or in any part of the coffee community that you're in. It almost requires like a certain type of person, because we live in variables that change all the time. Mm-hmm. All of that, and I think some people would want to go, well, where's the finish line? And it's like, oh, what finish line?
Yeah.
No, we have
that. It's a journey.
I have that conversation with customers all the time. They'll say, all right, so what's the best recipe?
Oh, yeah.
There is none.
Yeah.
It's whatever makes this happy.
Yep.
Yeah.
So.
And that's going to change.
Yeah, it absolutely does. And so it takes, in my job, you have to be flexible because the technology changes. The answers that you've given a million times will change.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So you have to be into the fact that, your troubleshooting, your process, what you're supporting, how the customers react to coffee will all change. When I started, third wave coffee was just getting big. So everything was light roast and crazy big ratios, and then it starts going back to dark roast and short ratios, and now we're seeing coffees from Vietnam becoming popular again, and Robustas coming in. Mm-hmm. And you have to decaf is more popular and it's better, so you have to kind of constantly be aware of what's changing, what the customer wants, what the machines need, and how that all works together. If you're the kind of person that learns something and that never changes, you're not going to do well. You have to be,
because then you kind of stay stuck.
You have to be curious.
Yeah. Yes. Even with coffees, I mean, I tell people that even they're used to the same coffee over and over again, but they're like, but why do I have to adjust every time I get a new bag? I gotta adjust my grinder.
The
coffee changes.
And that's the process. That's the joy. Because when you get a new coffee and you try your old recipe and it's like, oh, that's rough. But then, it sometimes takes a half a bag of coffee. It's a little bit of a financial and time investment, but when you hit it right and it tastes good, it's worth it.
Yeah.
And teaching customers how to do that is a joy.
Yeah.
Because when, they call you, they're so frustrated, they're not getting what they want. And, a 30-minute phone call later and they've dialed something in and they're like your best friend.
Yeah.
because they're enjoying this investment they had. They're enjoying their coffee. It's so rewarding.
How did you end up with La Marzocco?
I had been an engineering drafter for about 12 to 15 years or so. I had kind of hit my ceiling. My wife at the time encouraged me to go back to school. So I went and finished my bachelor's at UW, and then I went to grad school to be an environmental planner. While I was finishing grad school, my marriage at the time kind of fell apart. And so I didn't really know what I wanted to do, and I decided I really didn't want to be a bureaucrat. I didn't want to sit in a cube farm. My best high school friend, Kevin Colello, was the manager of parts at La Marzocco. And he knew I just needed a gig for a while to get myself back up on my feet after the divorce. And I joined the parts department. I started packing boxes. They realized, okay, he's not just, he's intelligent. And I started learning the machines. I think I drove John Blackwell crazy with questions. Just every day, you know, how does this solenoid work? How does this hydraulic circuit work? How does a contactor work in a Linea Classic? And I started, you know, learning how to do it, and they moved me to commercial solutions. And I just, like we were talking earlier about, there are people in after sales or service folks like you, we get something that interests us and we just dive in.
Yeah.
And I just absorbed it and kind of became an expert on our machines. Turned out I really love talking to end users. I love talking to the customers that had the GS3. And none of my other colleagues liked talking to these folks because they're out there, you know, home users are intense in their passion.
Right.
And so they're demanding, and it makes sense. You know, you're spending a lot of money on something you're passionate about. You know, you have to match that intensity, and I enjoyed that process. So when Scott Callender started La Marzocco Home, I just hounded him, like, I want out of this department. I want in here. So I was the second hire into La Marzocco Home. Wow. He hired Ben Blake in to help with marketing, and then I moved to Home to take care of all the after sales and logistics and all that stuff. And then we just started growing.
Like really fast.
Yeah. So it's been an adventure, but it's been the greatest job I've ever had.
I think coffee and all its tools remind me of music. Like the amount of times that I've told him that, you know what, I think I found my tone. He's like, all right, you tell me that every like 5 months. I'm like, no, I think I nailed it down to like every knob, every little bit, every bit of gain. I can feel it in my fingers. I'm done. Like I for a while had this thing in my mind that I was gonna find the best tone, and like I'm done. I never have to move my knobs or anything, or add any sort of pedal or anything like that. And then that changes.
Yeah, he raises the volume, and then the tone's completely different.
So I hope that you tell him often as a bass player, and as a bass player, you say, guitars are weird, man.
And all its tools remind me of music. Like the amount of times that I've told him that, you know what, I think I found my tone. He's like, all right, you tell me that every like 5 months. I'm like, no, I think I nailed it down to like every knob, every little bit.
Yeah, he raises the volume, and then the tone's completely different.
So I hope that you tell him often as a bass player, and as a bass player, you say, guitars are weird, man. Your tone's got to change depending on who you're playing with, what the song is, if you're recording, if you're not. That's funny.
Even the signal change, everything, you know, it's just, but I love that he's so passionate about, you know, chasing that tone and
calibrating.
And he calibrates, and once he finds it, just like a customer that dials in their coffee, he's like super stoked.
Yeah, I feel
something
like
changes.
No, you do. When when it sounds good.
You play with more, I don't know, life.
Oh, it's like when you get a guitar too, and it's a different guitar, you feel like you're playing better, or you feel like you can write a song, you know.
Or if you have a guitar that doesn't play well, you feel like you don't, but you get one that's just magic.
Yeah.
I started on trombone, moved to baritone.
Ooh, nice.
But then when I got in high school, I moved to euphonium, which is cool. And that's,
I feel like you're just making words up.
I don't know what that is.
A euphonium is like a tenor tuba. So it's looks like a tuba with a straight bell, and it's about this big.
Oh, yeah.
The cool thing about it is in a wind ensemble, the euphonium gets a lot of, it's kind of a lower register, but it gets a lot of the melody. And I was awful with theory. I could barely read, but I focused on the feel and the tone. So that's why I got to play euphonium, because I could play that melody well with, with feel. But that's why I fell in love with bass, and I started playing bass in high school because I was turned on by a lot of bands that I listened to where the bassist wasn't just
right.
The bassist was actually helping with the melody. They were doing the harmony and doing really interesting things along with the guitar. It wasn't a second-class citizen. It was, a part of the sound. So I didn't play guitar for years after. So I was not one of those, I'm going to join a band, I can't play guitar, I'm going to stick on bass. No, I started playing bass on my own and
very cool.
Just fell in love with it. Guitar is a hobby. I like to bang around and I love to build guitar amps, but bass is the instrument I can really express myself on.
Yeah, I mean, I've been playing guitar since I was a kid, maybe 13, 14 years old. But we've been playing together for almost 6 years now, and I don't know how I ended up playing bass. And maybe
Well, originally, so it's a 3-piece, and originally we just wanted to play fun covers, and we were like, let's just switch around, and like I'll play drums on a couple songs.
Okay, that's right.
And then we tried it, and we're like, I'm not good at drums.
Yeah.
So you're like, I don't want to sing, and it just kind of like we sat where we were, and I always offered, I'm like, we can switch back and forth, but you were like, hold on,
yeah.
this is kind of nice. Like there's
a
whole
when
world
it feels
here.
right.
Oh man,
you just became a bassist.
Yeah.
That's how that works.
Well, I was telling you earlier that I bought a bass for my daughter, but I really bought it for myself, and it's a Squire P bass.
Sure.
Early 2000. It's got a rosewood neck on it, and so I hot rodded it out. I changed the pickups. I put a different bridge, and playing bass, like I'm the rhythm section, and
Feel it.
I feel it.
Yeah.
It's made me a better musician because now when I listen to music, I listen to melody now. I listen to the bass. I listen to the drum.
Not just like the flashy stuff.
Yeah, not before I'd hear the solos and stuff like that. And but even playing live, like when I was playing guitar, and I think a lot of guitarists do this, or I might be wrong, would listen to the singer. They would follow along with the singer. But now, every time, even when I'm playing guitar in the show, I'll listen to the drums.
Yeah.
I'll listen to the bass.
Yeah.
And it's made me a better musician.
Like the work side of it, right? We're like fixing espresso machines and coffee makers, grinders. You're on the other side of it, on the kind of like the manufacturer side, and behind you there's also R&D departments, and there's all this like work and like pushing the boulder up the hill. It's like, is it so we can all enjoy a good cup of coffee, or is it so we can keep this going because it feels so good in like a world of distraction and disconnect? We still have coffee.
Yeah, I think it's all of that. Obviously it's an industry, so you need to make money in it to survive, but ultimately I love working in the industry because I could have a job working for Frigidaire, helping technicians work on refrigerators, but there's no passion there.
Yeah.
Nobody really cares about their refrigerator, but our customers love their espresso machines.
100%.
I mean, it is. So they're passionate about it. I get people, if they have a problem with their machine and we send somebody out, I love getting those emails that say, hey, Felipe came out and he worked on my machine and it works great and he was awesome and the whole experience was awesome.
Yeah.
I love my coffee. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I don't think an after-sales guy at Frigidaire gets that.
Right.
We get customers refer their machines as their babies.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah, and I was like, I totally get it.
Well, the amount of times they're like, if I drop off my machine for repair today, like when am I looking? I'm like, ooh, it might be a couple weeks. It's like, you can see like okay, I can do a couple weeks.
Yeah.
I mean, it's tough because you never really know. Sometimes it's sooner, but you never really know exactly. And it's like, it's hard to give someone in that state a date, because when that date comes, they're like,
oh, they're on it.
Hey, no rush, but is it ready?
You have to say 4 weeks when it's going to be 2.
But they're so happy when they pick up the machine, or when you give them a call and they're like, hey, your machine's ready. Like, I'll be there in an hour. Or like, they're like ready to roll.
And like, I'm in the parking lot.
Yeah.
I'm in the parking lot.
I embrace the diversity of different type of coffees, you know, wherever we go. And, you know, I've said it before, I've had great coffee, you know, on lousy machines, and I've had lousy coffee on great machines.
For sure. Yeah. And we always talk about how, like, you can have the whole method of, like, measuring down to the 10th of a gram, combing it through with needles, and, you know, doing all the things, and you're like, oh, this is great. And then when we were in Florence, Italy, we had coffee that wasn't measured or combed, and came from a lever machine, and it was incredible.
Yeah.
It's just a different voice.
The thing I love about our machines isn't that they're not doing something really special to the coffee, but they're just very consistent.
Yeah.
So if your coffee's bad, unless something's really wrong, it's because of you. And that's great, because I can fix you.
Yeah.
Like, I can help you get through that and make amazing coffee, because it's, you know, it's not like an E61 group where, you know, you feel like you have to temperature surf to get the right temperature.
Yeah.
And you've got to kind of play this machine like an instrument to get it to work.
Mm-hmm.
All you've got to do is just be consistent
Mm-hmm.
and know the process, and you're going to make amazing coffee. So it's just the consistency and the tool that separates us from other machines, I feel. There's no magic there. It's just consistency.
Yeah.
Sure.
So that's when I tell customers, you know, the biggest key is just be consistent and take that WTT tool, you know, get rid of it. Don't mess with the coffee. Just tamp it and go.
Yeah.
And the simpler the better, and that always seems to work.
Yeah, I noticed that, like, people sometimes get lost in the process,
Mm-hmm.
and they get further away from enjoying things because it was 3 seconds longer than they thought it should be, or something like that. And it's like,
we have a little bit of a motto: coffee is an agricultural product,
Yeah.
and it varies.
yeah.
So your espresso will vary, the taste will vary, and
At
if you
every
accept
bag.
that and accept the experience,
Yeah.
you're going to enjoy it so much
It
more.
literally has, like, a life of its own,
Yeah.
characters of its own, bag to bag, like you
Yeah.
were saying, and you just have to, like, dance with it.